No intro?
And we are live. Weekend editions back with
Where's
you.
the
Hail
intro?
Varsity.
What happened?
Powered by Cornhead Lager. We're not in studio, and our dear friend Elijah's not in studio, so we don't.
What the hell's he doing today?
He's camping. He's not.
What?
He's not injured like you or I.
Oh man,
there's hurt. There's injured. There's Husker Nation on the 5th of July, around 6:03 p.m. Central Time in meltdown mode with the Evan Cooper bombshell. Pete Thamel with ESPN reporting that. And already Pete Thamel this morning out with a name to watch. John Butler. We'll get into all of it. Brandon Vogel's on the family vacation. Maybe Vogues drove through John Butler's old neighborhood in Philly on his way to Pittsburgh. So no Vogues today, but we'll dial in with the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp.
Did Brandon not bring his phone or something? I mean, come on. Where does he go?
No, I mean, Vogues takes off like 4 hours a year. So
unacceptable. Unacceptable.
But hope everyone had a just incredible 4th of July as we get into, camp countdown mode, 55 days till football's here. But end of July is when Nebraska gets their camp rolling. We'll be giving you all sorts of goodies from Big Ten Media Days. And let's get our starting 5 shout-outs this morning. The other day was in at 7:01. Kraynak, you and I corresponded.
That's super. That's almost cheating right there.
That's all good for Dave. Good for the other Dave.
Good for the other Dave, though.
But no, we corresponded right before 7 a.m. So we were up and Adam A-Dub is here, making sure his Uncle Jimmy gets in. Or hoping his Uncle Jimmy gets in. So there we go. Tim says, good morning. Walter from Philly says, WTF. I believe he's referencing the Evan Cooper news. NASCAR Eric says, good morning. Good to have you, NASCAR Eric. Michael from North Carolina. Good to have you. Tyler checks in. Evan Cooper, ? Wow, what news? What a development. Good morning, GBR. Mr. Snitley, Jeff Snitley, has given us props for being up. Elijah set that up ahead of time. Yeah. Jeff, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. And yes, Rick is in 50 days till Husker football. Crazy Spider Adventures is in. Jimmy is here. Charles, good to have you in, Charles.
Dude, this has gone beyond the top 5. I'm good with it, though. This is now gone to like
we have our starting 5.
Okay,
but we also have it's a lot like the Nebraska defensive side of the football, right? Where you just have 3 lines of high level rotation. Patrick is in. Patrick, good to have you. And Moonbot is in. Says howdy nerds. Fong Wei checks in. I'm here for the free 2-day-old hot dogs. Yep. We have hot dogs we had on 4th of July that need to be eaten. Red Knight 79 is in. Good to have you. Robert checks in. Kevin from Texas. Black Hills Brennan. And Brent is in. The other Elijah back from Omaha. And Stephen. Stephen, good to have you. So, and yep. Stephen tweeted in last night, what the hell, with the Evan Cooper news. So let's just dive in and touch on the departed. And Evan Cooper has been with Matt Rhule all along everywhere, right? We're talking Temple, we're talking Baylor, we're talking Carolina.
Top lieutenant, basically.
Yeah, and every time there's talk of talent acquisition, talent development, that beyond the diamonds in the rough take, right? It's Coop's got a good enough eye to spot a player kind of at the same time in a player's development as an Ohio State, and Rhule's reference this here more recently with, hey, we're not betting on long shots. We're going after the same caliber of talent at the same age level. It's not, let's pat Nebraska on the head. Yes, they are able to see and do things at a high level historically with finding guys because they've had to do that at the Temples and the Baylors, but they've done a magnificent job of identifying and then developing, right? And
it's his super talent. That's his talent,
is.
right?
And just talking to some folks, I mean, there is absolute no BS in that defensive back room. Yeah. There's that tug of war between who are the two biggest diva positions on a football team. Is it defensive back or is it wide receiver? Everybody says it's wide receiver, but you've got personalities, and I'm not calling out Nebraska, but just generally speaking, you've got personalities in the defensive back room. You've got to manage egos. It's 20 plus kids in that room, right? I mean, it's a deep room for 5 spots.
Totally. So and just the nature of the position, you're kind of by yourself. You're exposed when you're an offensive defensive line. You're a little bit anonymous, right?
Yeah, you've got island mentality as a defensive back.
Corner or safety, wide receiver. I mean, everybody sees you drop the ball or get burned or make the pick, right? Like everybody,
right?
Sees
and then have amnesia.
It's a different sort of position. So you understand why there's different personalities. Evan Cooper, this is disappointing. Now, last year you had Bob Wager, right? You had the tight ends coach that was hired out of straight out of high school, and he resigned. Not straight out of high school coaching. He takes the job as tight ends coach, ends up having to resign because of a DUI situation. That he was not like a core Rhule guy though. And if you were to pick one person that is a core, like pick one person who's a core Rhule, like devotee, top, it's Cooper. And so I'm really curious to see how Rhule responds to this. He depended on him heavily. Right. And he respected him heavily. Cooper made some good scratch as a defensive backs coach. I think he was
640.
Yeah, something like that. That's a pretty highly paid defensive backs coach. So he was really respected by Rhule. He was elevated by Rhule. When you think about the day that Tony White leaves, which will happen at some point, right? The defensive coordinator, Cooper is one of those guys that you would kind of look to if you were going to hire internally, like, oh, he's got a shot, because he knows Rhule's system so well. He understands the talent he's looking for. It's a big loss. It's a big loss.
More
than the position coach. It's more than that, right?
No, it's history. It's the ability to kind of hit the ground running, right? When you have your guys on staff, you don't have to get to know somebody. It's old hat for you. Now, at least you've had a year with Cooper. At least you got a year of watching that defensive back room really grow. They were good. They were really good under White's system. And listen, you can't sugarcoat the fact that it's a tough take, and it's a tough take this soon before camp.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think you can rest easy on, will the secondary be as good? There's expectations. Tony White's still the man. It's still the defense that Nebraska looks to improve upon. That was really, really good last year. What you do have though is Matt Rhule and his organizational ability, right? Not just an amazing communicator or dogged recruiter, or he has contingencies. Okay.
Oh, for sure. Rolodex is deep here. Like
Matt Rhule, 12 hours ago is looking for his new defensive backs coach that's of the same ilk, if possible, as Evan Cooper. And at 7 a.m. Central Time, Pete Thamel's throwing out the name John Butler. So that was quick. That isn't the hire that we know of yet. It's not official, but there's your national media guy in Thamel with a source that says, look for John Butler. I've got some numbers on John Butler. Everybody
what's he all about? I know he's formerly with the Bills, about as much as I know.
And I just looking at John Butler here, he's a guy that Billy O'Brien hired when he was at Penn State. And he made the jump from secondary coach in 2013 2012 to 2013, he passed over some monster names on that Penn State staff to get the defensive coordinator job, and then went to the NFL with Bill O'Brien for the Texans. And once the time of the Texans was done, was with McDermott for the Buffalo Bills, and they mutually, McDermott and Butler, agreed to part ways, but it wasn't for what he was doing. I mean, think of the division he has been in for a while with the Bills, and that includes Tom Brady and Tua, right? So Buffalo had a top 5 pass defense last year in the NFL, number 4, and they couldn't beat Mahomes. That's really about it. I mean, they allowed 18 touchdown passes. They had 18 interceptions. That back end for Bills Mafia was really talented. But what John Butler is, he's another example of a guy that has climbed the ladder, went to Catholic University. That's in Washington, D.C. That's Division III.
Was it Catholic? Do you know?
I assume so.
Can we get descriptive? Can we call it Saint something?
No, I know. It just says it's not religion. It just says it says school, college, Catholic. All right. So Catholic is where he went and then coached there.
Unoriginally named school on earth. Like, where'd you study at? Public. I went to public.
Like, but what? he ended up landing a graduate assistance gig for Mac Brown.
Okay.
From little old Catholic University to a GA spot for 97, 98, couple of years with Mac Brown. So here's the coaches that John Butler's been under. Mac Brown, Steve Spurrier with South Carolina, and Spurrier's last year. Tim Brewster, who was on Coach Prime's staff, the former Minnesota coach from 07 to 2010. Yep. And you also have Bill O'Brien, of course, at Penn State, and then to the NFL, then Sean McDermott. So Spurrier, Brewster, Mac Brown, O'Brien, McDermott is kind of his coaching tree. Also spent about 3 years at Harvard. But everywhere he's gone, he has started out as a secondary coach or a linebacker coach or a special teams guy and worked his way up to coordinated defense. So not only is this potential hire.
Okay.
Not only is this a potential hire for Nebraska to fill the shoes of Evan Cooper, but it might be the step ahead to fill the shoes of one Mr. Tony when he decides to take a head coaching job. And so Ross checks in here with the Buffalo situation, and it wasn't for performance, but Ross is suggesting in the stream here that Butler wanted the DC job and kept getting passed up. So maybe, we're touching on that right now, Ross. Maybe he's a DC in waiting. So you can't just pass over Cooper's departure. Everyone wants to know why. Good luck finding that out. There's rumors, there's suggestions, there's all of that. And I'm not going to get into rumor speculation.
I mean, it's a sudden, listen, when you suddenly resign a month before the season, a month before practice,
something happened or something was happening.
You did something, probably. Or you got accused of something, probably. So, and it would take a lot to have to step aside. So, you hope it's all fine. Like, you hope there's no legal anything or any kind of, anybody that's hurt or anything like that. But
right,
pretty sudden departure, probably wasn't good, obviously. Yeah.
Well, and don't, the other thing I'll look at with this is just my 2 cents is this is Rhule's guy.
Yeah.
It's always been Rhule's guy. So this may not be a Matt Rhule call on the departure.
True. Yeah. Or it may be just one of those things where it's obvious, like, yeah, you got to go, man. But who knows? Or maybe he's ill. We don't know. But Evan Cooper gone. After Nebraska's had a run actually of defensive back stability. especially if you look back over like the last 20 or whatever, right? You had George Darlington, and then from then on,
George is one of my favorites. George is wearing a Hawaiian T-shirt right now, or a Hawaiian shirt, likely.
See,
at 8:04 Central Time.
So you had him forever, and then after that, just a rotating cast, right? A little bit of Marvin Sanders, a little bit of, I mean, you can just go on and on with the names. And so I looked back and I did compile defensive backs coaches over the last 10 years, and it's going to be fun. And there is, when Gary joins us, we're just going to flash the photo. We're going to see if we can all guess
who
bingo? It is. And they run together, honestly, because there were so freaking many, I think, especially during the 2000s. But over the last 7 years, it was, well, Cooper only got one season, I guess, now that you think about it. But, you had Cooper, and then before that, Travis Fisher. And Travis Fisher was there for the duration of the Frost era. So it's a little disappointing
hit me with some of these names.
Oh, see, no, I can't do the names. I can't do the names. That's part of
Bo would always have not a new secondary coach, but you had a couple of guys that kind of rotated in with the Bo era.
Well, do you want to play now, and then we'll let
just run down the list. Later? Yes.
The names, or do you want to see some faces?
Yeah. No, I want to. You can just give me names.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you hints. That's no fun. Okay, so one of them coached a couple different positions under Mike Riley and ended up going to Maryland at some point.
Is there a Charlton Warren on the board?
Charlton Warren is one of them, yes, but who I was talking about, and he was the crossover between Pelini and Riley.
Right. And Warren, was he a Air Force guy?
Actually, yes. And now that you mentioned that, and I believe he's at Tennessee now, or he was.
I mean, Warren was a hell of a recruiter for him.
I'm trying to find so I can just show you. Here we go. Let me show you. Mr. Warren. There's Charlton Warren right there. You see him? You got that?
Do I need to pull her up here? Yeah.
Okay.
There's Tennessee kicking ass and taking names in the world of recruiting.
I'm trying to operate this just stock photo viewer on my ancient ass PC, and I did have it all set up with like a gallery where you could just click through.
Yep.
Boy, is that not working?
Let's spend a minute. We'll get into the play the secondary
staff over here. We need to get the tech staff. Well, where's the tech staff?
Let's spend a minute though. The here and now. As we started off, we talked a little bit about Nebraska, their prowess for 2024. And the talk has been quarterback and offense and excitement level, because you feel like your known quantity is going to be the defense. You've got a lot of dudes back. You've got your staff back, ... except for now. Your staff, defensive side of the ball is not intact because of the Cooper news yesterday. So if John Butler is the guy.
Who dat?
John Butler.
No, who's this?
Comes in.
Who's that?
Oh, Williams.
Yeah, see, I forgot. I labeled them at the top. That's going to be a
no. I didn't know that. I just know. Yeah, that was the guy that. Yeah, and that's Travis Fisher, right?
No, Evan Cooper. Evan Cooper.
Okay. The beard guy.
Resemblance. This one, hey, might surprise you, right?
That's not Bray. That is, what's his name? Linebacker coach. Mark Banker. No. I love Banker.
Yeah,
I always see Banker golfing.
He had safeties and defensive coordinator.
Okay.
Under Riley. Now, this is the dude that I guarantee you won't get. I was like, who? I had no recollection of this guy. He has to be the most obscure coach that Nebraska's ever had. Right?
No idea. No idea.
Scott Booker? I don't even remember his name hard. He was on Riley's last staff under Diaco. Scott Booker, like he was actually here coaching 7 years ago, and no one has a clue who the guy is.
Kraynak, level of concern here. Can this be seamless? Can it be seamless? Can it be, Coop, you're awesome. Thanks for everything. But here's the new guy that comes in and is just as good or better. Last year, it was a bunch of Rhule guys that never worked for Tony White. And you saw how professional and well that staff meshed together come Saturdays on the defensive side of the football.
Yep.
You've got a veteran room. You're still trying to figure some things out at that opposite cornerback spot. But you got Syer coming in. You've got some young pups. So everyone's screaming for Bill Bush, but Bill's got a good thing going, super talented. And if Bill wants to get back into coaching, I mean,
great recruiter.
He's Bill Bush. Recruiter. Bill Bush can take about any phone call he wants.
Yeah.
Frankly,
he's coached under Urban. He's coached under Bo. He's coached under Callahan. He's coached under who else at LSU? Oh, the old gravelly voice guy. I can't even think of his damn name.
Go Tigers.
Yeah.
Coach O.
Coach Orgeron. Yeah. It doesn't seem like he's coming back.
Warren says Scott Booker was hired as the nickel coach, senior defensive assistant by the Bills in 2024. So the name you just flashed ended up taking John Butler's gig.
What? How about that? What a small world. So the most obscure Nebraska coach in history.
It's the 6 degrees of separation. But listen, you also had either Josh or Daniel, one of the Bullocks twins, that's in the NFL with San Francisco right now.
Daniel.
And Daniel's super talented, done a great job coaching. He was a name I saw last night as well, along with Bill Bush. But the rundown for John Butler is impressive, NFL guy. And again, he's not officially a hire. It's the name that Pete Thamel reported this morning.
Pete that's sort of what he does, right? He's almost like Pete's walking version of Football Scoop, like just the human version, the accurate human version of Football Scoop.
Right.
I mean, he names all the coaches. Do they all have to do they just call him? What happens? How does he know he knows all of them? He knows every theory on every team all the time.
Yeah, my theory is, hey, I got something for you. This is happening. Here's the information. Source says XYZ, and away you go. So, but no, for Nebraska to be 12 hours later out with a name with this resume, but it all comes down to connection, right? Different coaching style and fit within the defensive scheme. And then can you go get performance? And then, by the way, what do you think, Kraynak, about Nebraska's staff as a whole from a recruiting standpoint and that eye for talent? Because we let off the show talking about how impressive and important Evan Cooper has been with Rhule at his different stops as that numero uno talent evaluator. It's Coop. What do you think of the guy?
He's key.
Rhule's seen enough football to know if he likes a kid or not. Same with, all these guys have sets of eyes, and then you beat it up in a meeting room, and away you go. But what I do like about what Nebraska's been able to do in this short time is get performance. They have went and gotten performance out of an entire defensive unit and for sure the secondary.
Well,
so does that?
What's the one area of concern coming into this year, right? Like that, if you were to pick one spot.
Well, the secondary was a question mark,
and you got five. You got 5 DBs that we're talking about here, right?
Well, you do, and you got Buford, you got Hartzog, you've got Tommy Hill, He's played his ass off. I mean, that's a big credit to Tommy. That's a big credit to Evan Cooper.
Who's the cat that got hurt early last year that had
Singleton and Gifford rounded out.
DJ,
those guys are money, and if they can come back and be healthy and ball out like they were, that's big. But what's behind them?
Yep. And then you got
the depth is the question.
You got the freshman,
Boodle,
the track athlete, the
Boodle and Charles.
Jamal Charles. He ascended quite a bit. You also moved over the other track guy to corner. His name escapes me now. Nope. He was one of Rhule's first recruits. Guy that ran like a 10-200.
Oh, Doss, the wide receiver, moved over to defensive back.
But there's another guy that I'm talking about.
Okay,
glasses, super fat. He was major track guy. He didn't have any other football offers. Similar to Jamal Charles. But he was like the Texas State champ. God, I can't think of his name. But he got some playing time in the red-white game as a corner. Probably the fastest guy on the team. So kind of what we're getting at here is there's plenty of talent and speed in the defense.
There's options galore.
Plenty. But as the game gets more complex, as the game gets more pass friendly, which it does, you ask a lot of those DBs, man. You have to; those guys really have to know what is going on.
Sam is in with Bryce Turner for the win.
Thank you, Sam. My goodness, I could not think of the cat's name. Appreciate it. Cat. I said cat. This guy said cat. Okay, Mario. I don't know. I said cat. But you got plenty of options. Plenty of options at defensive back. The concern is Cooper appeared to have the respect of the entire room. He had the respect of the staff. He had good command. He got performance, like you said, out of the DB.
You got a standard, Kraynak, right? It's like you're going to do X, Y, and Z, or you're not going to play.
So you're dropping this guy in who went to Catholic University, the most generic university in the history.
Possibly, it's not official.
No, it is official. I just looked it up, and yeah, he went to Catholic.
I'm talking. It's not an official hiring announcement.
Oh, John Butler. Gotcha. Yeah. By the way, Catholic University. Guess what their I thought their not slogan, their motto, the nickname. I thought it'd be Crusaders because, of course, right? Like, how generic can you get? But
the Friars,
Cardinals.
Okay, yeah, I got you.
Could see that. Catholic University Cardinals. How about that? I don't know. If you're John Butler, if you're any DB walking into this, though, you do have a tall order, right? So, one, you're coming in to coach, and you have to learn pretty quickly Tony White's system, and it doesn't appear that John Butler's coached in that system before. As a veteran coach, obviously you can do it, but if you think back to when Rhule got hired, they had that group had time. They had a spring together to learn it all, right? And then put it into practice come fall. He's not going to have that advantage. He's going to have to do a crash course, figure out that defense quick, figure out his personnel quick, figure out the corner opposite Tommy Hill really quick, figure out what's happening at safety. Because there's no, you mentioned, I think it's Gifford is a shoe-in. Hartzog, you probably have to find a spot for him somewhere. I think safety. I think he's he's not.
You have Buford, you have Singleton, you have Giff.
Yeah, I mean, you're good.
You have Hartzog, you have Hill, you have Sayer at the other corner, or maybe Boodle. I mean, but you need depth behind.
The guy's got he's got a tall order, right? It's not going to be easy on him, and it's not going to be easy on the players at all.
No. Well, you've got an elder statesman group in class that they know this defense, they know Coach White. They know what they're supposed to do, and that's go create turnovers, right? Be better on third down. There's a short list of bullet points, as good as the defense was.
Yeah.
And their job is to play better than they did a year ago, and they played good ball a year ago. And it's still White's defense, right? It's still Rhule's team. And I mean, not having Coops, tough, but you didn't lose your coordinator. Right.
No.
So
of course, it could be worse there. The timing sucks though, and it's funny that the timing happens got pretty similar to Wakers, because Wakers was that was right before the season started last year too, right? So you go into it. It's just, it's just disruptive. It's not cataclysmic. It's not going to sink the program or anything, but it's a disruption. It's something they have to figure out. You got a new defensive backs coach just coming in out of nowhere, just doesn't know any of these guys, doesn't know who responds to what and how. He doesn't know what buttons
you can get some intel, but the job is to not screw up that back end. And Charles chimes in here. Charles, good point here with Cooper being one of Rhule's guys, para OOU, one of us. This shows the standards exist for everyone in the program. Shows me that the talk and chasing 3 is more than just words. Yeah, listen, this was a situation where if Coop, this is the wrong way to say it, but if Coop isn't protected is the wrong way to put it. But that's if Coop can go, we can all go. Right? Everyone's got to do X, Y, and Z to be here. So that is very clear and important. But we'll see if Butler is the guy. Of course, Bullocks and Bill Bush, 2 names that Husker fans are clamoring for as well. And both those guys are super talented and could fit. But I like what I see from Butler's resume. And I also think that, Rhule will do and has done the due diligence, presumably along with Tony White. These guys all have a short list. It's the old AD 3 names in your top desk drawer. Yeah. If you're a good coach, you're ready to turn and burn with your contingency and get this hammered out, because time is of the essence right now. So get this guy in here, let him meet with the room, let him meet with his defensive coordinator, and we'll see if this guy's been on the radar for a while. At some point, if John Butler is the hire, Rhule will talk about the why with this. So, but you're not going to probably get any specifics on Evan Cooper. We aren't going to go into specifics because we don't have anything more than some speculation. You may want to hear that. It just, things like this, Kraynak, you put it best, can't be good if out of the blue at 6:03 p.m. on July 5th.
Yeah.
The news comes out.
Yeah, and it's immediate, and it's somebody that's significant, but again, it won't sink the program. Big loss for Matt. He's going to have to recalibrate. It's a disruption in recruiting, and it's a disruption in getting ready for the season. That's exactly what it is. Rhule is a pretty motivated, determined dude, though. He doesn't seem to get caught flat-footed too much. No. I'm sure they will have a pretty extensive plan to get whoever is getting hired acclimated quickly. But tall order, a disruption. It could manifest in some ways this year. It's not what anybody had in mind, for sure. So shut down the program, I guess, is what we're getting at. It's all over. It
won't, and you really can't. On3 is also reporting that Butler is the target and looks to be the guy moving forward. So bigger question here, and Wayne checks in. Let's talk recruiting, right?
Yeah.
Because Coop also very big in the Northeast. Coop was very big in Florida. Miami's his native town. And Nebraska gonna feel that, not just from the evaluation standpoint, but Coop's been very good at what he's done from a recruiting standpoint. All the guys that Nebraska's brought in, whether it be a snippet of action you saw in the spring game or dudes that were performing for you on Saturdays as a Nebraska fan, guys could play, and guys did play at a high level. The thing I liked most about Nebraska's secondary was their tackling, their physicality.
Straight up. And Travis Fisher, I give Travis Fisher credit for establishing that too. He did a really good job of that. And I think you also have to give credit to guys like DiCaprio Bootle, that he really embodied that. And that's such a difference maker. That is such an underappreciated difference maker, is if you can get your secondary guys to play like they have a neck roll on and to really get in there and hit. God, that helps your defense so damn much. And there's a lot of DBs that won't. There's a lot of programs that's not how it is. And if it's a counter or a stretch play to the outside, they might give them a little nudge out of bounds, but they're not gonna blow up screen passes. How good was Bootle at that even, right? I just think I think that culture was set a while ago, and that's why guys like Lamar Jackson at first. Oh man, he used to drive me crazy. He used to drive me crazy because he would not do that, right? Like he would not hit. And then they finally broke through to him, and he could. Tommy Hill was similar. Tommy Hill was real similar. That's why he got booted from defense back to offense. They couldn't figure him out. And you remember against Northwestern and Ireland, he was starting corner, and then he was milk carton later that year, right? Because they couldn't figure out his position despite his talent.
The connection is Sean Patton. All right.
Sean Patton, and he's like the GM. Is that right? Of Nebraska football
for Nebraska. That's a connection here with Butler.
He coached Sean Patton at Catholic, according to Justin in the stream.
Yes. Yeah.
We can't verify. Our citation is Justin. That is our source.
Nope. I just got a text confirming that. So
hey, how about that? All right.
Yeah. How about that? So we'll check in with the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, with us here.
I prepared the PowerPoint presentation for him too, so we can go through and see. Yeah, so we can go through and see if he knows. And people in the stream constantly comment on this, that Gary's like AI when it comes to sports knowledge. You just got to ask Gary and he'll know. But he's going to be challenged with a few of these faces. I hope he wasn't watching earlier, so that he has. But because then he's he's got advance notice of some of these guys. Mm-hmm. I guarantee if he's not listening right now, he won't get Scott Booker. There's no way. He will not get Scott Booker. Do you think he will? You think Gary would get Scott Booker by just face alone? You think he'd be like, "Up, Scott Booker, 2017."
Gary probably has Booker on speed dial.
I know. Yeah, he probably does. We'll see if we can stump him.
From a recruiting standpoint, let's go there for a minute and just kind of continue on. Listen, Nebraska wants some more wide receivers. They want maybe another offensive lineman. They want another defensive lineman. They want an edge. Yeah, for 2025. Yep. They got the kid out of South Dakota. That's a two-way player on the line out of Winter, South Dakota. That's good.
Big rangy kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And Nebraska was able to be in the running for a lot of players that are that 4 and 5 star ilk. They just hadn't closed on as many of them as they'd like.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of pick up the pieces now with, from a recruiting standpoint, it's pretty imperative. I mean, Coach Donnie has done well with his offensive line gets. And they've gone after they've gone after some big fish. You've got Barthel that's connected to the New England East Coast area. So's Rhule, though. I mean, he's a Philly guy.
Jersey. Yep.
You're right. Jersey. Give me more New Jersey, please.
Yep.
And from a Texas standpoint, I mean, you've got great history down there.
Yep.
On top of just the part of your larger staff is still connected down in Texas, and your wide receivers coach. So, I mean, I don't think this isn't good or easy, but and then Pot Roast is making a name for himself. Coach Knighton, as an aggressive recruiter. So I think Nebraska's recruiting staff is fine. I think the coaches, they all got to be able to recruit for sure, but Cooper was really good at that.
By the way,
not just the connection part, but seeing that talent. Then can you fill that void? It isn't easy. I mean,
no.
in the history of every stop of the way to build up a program that went from 1 or 2 wins to 11 or 10, or by year 3, you're playing for a conference championship.
Yeah,
that part of that was Evan Cooper's eyes and coaching ability.
Well, is there? My head spins with all the different changes from the NCAA lately. So
you're going to be able to have your assistants or staff or analysts, better term, be able to communicate on the field. So you're going to have more coaches. You just got to make sure you don't have. Yeah, you just got to make sure you don't have too many cooks. Right?
Yeah,
making dinner.
But starting this year, and it's limitless, right? There's not a cap on it. No. So starting this year, so that helps cushion the blow a little bit too. Starting this year, you can have more on-field instruction, which typically what Nebraska would do and what all colleges would have to do is they'd have their main defensive backs coach if that person was in charge of corners and safeties, and then you would have grad assistants, right, that were allowed to provide on-field instruction. But meanwhile, you have these analysts back in the back room, that are really good strategically, help with designing game plans and all that, but they were not allowed to provide instruction on the field. So that changes. That helps cushion the blow a little bit too. In the rumor that Gary Sharp is taking over as the next defensive backs coach.
He's going to wear that hat. He's going to wear that hat proudly. Gary
joins us right now to confirm or deny. I don't think we got you, Gary.
Sharpie? You're muted, bud.
Don't hear you. I see you got the Yeti mic, though. That's exactly what I got. Muted. Let's unmute. No. So, you might check the settings. Pick your set. There goes Gary. He has a Yeti mic like I got, man. These are fantastic, by the way.
Those are good.
No free shout outs, but hey, Yeti, your sponsorship here. If you want these things to start flying off shelves, you know what to do. Hopefully Gary can rejoin us there with the Yeti mic too, because he's normally been doing the headset thing, right? This gives him a chance to up his voice processing game with the Yeti.
I had one of those back at. All right,
you guys mess with me, so
is that
I'm here to mess with you guys.
Sharpie, good to have you. How you doing, man? You sound wonderful. You're
good.
Going throwback with us here on a Saturday morning, and I loved your tweet last night. News dump at 6:03 on a Friday on a holiday weekend. Yeah, reaction to Evan Cooper, bud.
Well, I'm gonna start with getting to know Coop. It's unfortunate for him. This isn't a good situation. And, Nebraska football moves on and Evan Cooper's got to move on. But he's really good at what he does. And, this was not football performance related. It's never a good thing when you're a month out from the start of practice and you have somebody who is attached to the hip with Matt Rhule. This hurts Matt Rhule. Matt Rhule and Evan Cooper have been together for a long time. And, Matt Rhule holds Evan Cooper in high regard. While all of us are trying to figure out, hey, who's the next Tony White? Rhule probably is saying, that guy is coaching my defensive backs right now. So they've been together for a long time. They have great respect for each other. And Evan Cooper at his job as a football coach is very, very good in talent evaluation. And he means a lot to his room. And they have that bond and that relationship. So that part of me is like, gosh dang. But Matt Rhule holds his players to a high standard. He holds his coaches to a higher standard. And there's never anything good when you're a month out from practice and you drop something like this on the 5th of July on a Friday at 5:00 when a guy resigns, not gets fired, but resigns. But here's the thing that you guys have talked about that people are now starting to see this morning. And we realize, Matt Rhule always has a plan. I mean, look at how he moved from his tight end coach last year. Matt Rhule always has a plan, and this just didn't happen yesterday. Okay,
No.
This is something that has been addressed internally, and I'll walk you back through what I've been able to find out in the last 12 hours. But Matt Rhule always has a plan, and as you can see, they have a plan to move on quickly. As they've targeted John Butler to be the next defensive back coach. Now they just have to get to the finish line.
Yeah. John Butler seems like a solid veteran coach. He's been around under Bill O'Brien's coaching the NFL, and has ascended to defensive coordinator. It's been a big time programs, and that's kind of what you would need at this point, right? And I guess that would have been maybe more concerning if Rhule promoted maybe a younger, inexperienced guy that has such a big job, right? You're coaching 5 dudes, you're 5 positions on the field. You're coaching damn near half the defense.
And you're coaching up 15 others that need to be able to step in for you.
It's a lot of personality management, and it's a lot of like actual on-field management. It's a big job.
Well,
so I'm glad he brought in a veteran. It's kind of my point.
I think if you look at it here, first of all, you have to understand the defensive back room. That's a defensive back room that's really, really young. So they have 20, if my math is right, 24 scholarship guys and 16 are true or redshirt freshmen. So it's a young room. And that's where, Evan Cooper is very good at relating to young players. And the addition of John Butler, and again, if they get to the finish line here, it shows you NFL experience matters. Nebraska is in a mode right now is where they need to start sending guys to the league. And they need guys that and they've got a lot of NFL experience on that side of the ball. So not a surprise. You look at his background. Now, I think we need to clarify a couple of things because I've seen some incorrect things today and shared by people online, not media, but other people. John Butler is a little bit of a coaching gypsy. He also was unemployed. He left the Buffalo Bills after this past season. He wants to be a defensive coordinator, whether in the NFL or in college football. And that path was not there with the Bills. So they parted ways after the season. So it's not like Nebraska went into the Buffalo Bills staff and poached a guy. John Butler was out there, but John Butler was very much on the radar for, Nebraska's network, for Matt Rhule's network and the background. So I don't want to go to speculation that, this means he's the next defensive coordinator. Because I think that's kind of tough for guys that are on that side of the ball that are thinking, man, I thought I was being groomed. But I think we need to not focus on his desire to be a defensive coordinator, but to focus on his background and that he does have an extensive array of experience, and he kind of fits Rhule's mode of what he wants on his staff. There was, and as I'm coming to find out here in the last hour, he was really the main focus when they narrowed this down. Rhule has got a history of promoting from within, but in this situation, I don't think he can. And they have some good analysts that are helping out with defensive backs, but nobody that's ready to step out. There's also a little bit, Butler is a little bit familiar with what Rhule likes to do defensively, especially with his defensive backs. So that helped. But here's the timeline. So this has been in the works for a while. It's been something that has been addressed eternally you got to do this, this, and this. And finally it came to a head. Weird, on Tuesday, somebody in the industry, guys, reached out to me and they said, hey, why is Nebraska looking for a defensive back coach? And my return text was, an analyst? Because it's on the heels of you can expand.
Legislation.
Yeah, you can expand. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe they're looking. And this person responded, I don't think so. And then I said, are they looking for a Coop replacement? And the conversation never went anywhere. So now that's the first thing I thought of last night after this news came out, of this has been in the works for a bit. The Nebraska's been looking, and now it lines up where we'll probably find out that Evan Cooper has not been with the staff for a bit. And you drop it on the 5th of July, and the next morning, Pete Thamel, who, is on a text chain with Matt Rhule, has who the replacement is going to be. It's never a good thing but it's refreshing to know that Matt Rhule is a guy with a plan that is always thinking ahead. And he's not going to let the program suffer because somebody stepped out of line. Because he owes it to first and foremost his players, but then secondly, he owes it to everybody else in the football program to keep this train moving and move along, because that's what happens in college athletics. You can't stop and go, oh man, Coop was a great guy. That's too bad. Oh no, the season's going to suck. No, they got high expectations. They're going to let anything derail them right now.
Gary Sharp with us, the Iron Horse weekend edition of Hail Varsity Radio, reacting to the Evan Cooper news and potentially a pending John Butler hire. Sharpie, you nailed it with the background of Butler and what you need in that room. As you look at recruiting right now with Nebraska, the parts of their staff and Cooper's fit there, let's talk about that void, because Nebraska is still trying to close on some 2025 guys, and Cooper's involvement or impact is a better word when it comes to the recruiting trail for Nebraska, not just for defensive backs, but just being able to connect. He's, Cooper's a Miami guy, but also could go down to Texas, could also work in the Northeast part.
Yeah, he's Coop is he's a really good talent evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's somebody, when you're around Rhule has a blueprint of the kind of player he likes, what they're looking for, their belief in the development system. And so Evan Cooper had that knowledge when they're looking at players, and he's a guy that can connect pretty easy. He talks the talk. Nebraska on the staff, in my opinion, lacks just a major closer. I think Rhule's a good recruiter, but I would like to have more than just your head coach as your closer. So I think
like a John Blake type.
Yeah.
A John Blake,
But and Evan Cooper was good in that role. You're right, Schmidt. They've got a couple of prospects that are deciding on Nebraska, and Weber is one of them who I think is going to end up at Nebraska. But, that's why you act quickly, because you got some decisions to be made for 25 and beyond guys that are like, oh, what's going on? Oh, okay, there's some stability there. Okay, they got a plan. Let's get to know this guy. We're going to put this guy out in front and center of, hey, this would be who you potentially might be playing for. But I think when we look at the big picture here, they're going to focus on the 24 season, because we talked about it now in the entire offseason. Internally, they are very, very locked and loaded where they think they can go. And they're not going to let anything, a player, a coach, anything, knock them off. So by acting quickly, this is for 24, the 24 roster. And then once we get our feet on the ground with 24, we can start looking at big picture and what this means down the road. But, in recruiting, you gotta look at what Oregon and Ohio State are doing. You got to have some dudes out there recruiting. And, and I don't know, I just kind of want to look at John Butler to take over in 24, and then we'll figure out the rest.
Sure. Focus on what's on your plate.
Yeah.
Right. See if it
works. Because his biggest challenge isn't convincing a Weber to come to Nebraska in 25. It is getting to know a room that's got some talent, some promising talent, but it's got a lot of eyeballs now that are probably hurt. The quote. Okay, so the quote that was put out by Isaac Gifford, have you guys talked about that?
Not yet. Yeah. We were going to bring you in on it.
Okay, so Isaac Gifford tweeted out the quote that Evan Cooper has. That is a quote that is used in the defensive back room, and is a quote. It is a quote that is used primarily with around their football program. So it isn't like, he tweeted something out and you're like, oh my God, he friggin' hates Coach Cooper. He can't stand him. So this is essentially in Evan Cooper's bio, Isaac Gifford will not have to worry about turning in a single digit. Okay. The guy is one of the faces of Nebraska football. He's one of the captains. And the quote is, the slaughterhouse of failure is not my destiny. It will persist until I succeed. That's a quote that Evan Cooper has that they use in the defensive back room that a lot of guys on that side of the ball hear a lot. So it's not like, oh my God, I didn't know that Giff didn't like Coop. No, it's another indication that they're not going to let anything knock them off stride. That's their quote. That's what they've lived by. One guy's not here, but the rest of us are, and we're moving forward. Strength in numbers, and one guy's not going to derail the program. Yeah, and I don't want to say, oh my, you know what, Evan Cooper, on to the next guy. No, big loss. It's a loss for Nebraska. You cannot deny that. It's a loss for Nebraska. Mm-hmm. It's a loss for Nebraska on two levels. One, because Evan Cooper is very talented. And then the other one is you are a month out and you've got 18 to 23-year-old kids that are in that room going, man, what do we do now? We're not leaving, but what do we do now? So then the older guys in that room get everybody together and say, you know what? I don't care who our coach is. We got a plan. I'm telling you that this morning. That's been reiterated to me here in the last 12 hours is this team will not be knocked off by any outsiders. Anything that is noise outside, they are focused on the task at hand. And I think you might see even a little bit more of a bonding of guys pulling together because there will be some creeping into the doubt of, oh my God, what's going on in Nebraska? Yeah, and those guys that matter most will say, we're good.
Yeah. Maybe one of the bigger concerns game-wise with something like this is, the Colorado game. I mean, if you're Shedeur Sanders, if you're, any of the talented receivers, including Travis Hunter they brought in, that's going to be a challenge as it was, even if Cooper was still here. It just makes it a little, that much more difficult. They're going to face some intricacies there. They're going to face
but Mark,
a team that –
But Mark, it's still the same guys in the back end that got to do the job.
The players are still the same. And Tony White's still calling the defense.
Yeah, but it's disruptive. It's disruptive to everything you're doing.
I'm not going to deny that, but it's disruptive if you let it be.
Yeah.
This is a sign of a more mature program if you can have a guy who is extremely popular. He's extremely popular. That all of a sudden he's not part of your program. Last year they lost a tight end coach to a DUI. A lot of people didn't really get to know him. Coop's been here for a little bit, and Coop's everywhere. So
he's an institution.
Yeah, a sign of a program, and especially with the guy at the top, is that one misstep doesn't just take away all the work you put in. So I think I think it's more where you'll miss Cooper initially is the knowledge. The interaction, the relationships he's built up. If you get a guy like John Butler in that seat, that's the football stuff. Okay, football is football. Okay, and you do have an extensive background of football knowledge. It's not like you're pretty raw. Your thing will be getting to know each guy's strengths. Okay, what button you can push, what button you can't push, where you can take them, all of that kind of stuff.
That's kind of what I'm getting at there, Gary. It's like think about somebody like Tommy Hill, where the previous staff couldn't reach him. Yeah. Right. They just couldn't connect with him.
That's a great point.
Right. And then somehow, some way, Evan Cooper and or Matt Rhule, they were able to, and able to really tap into that talent that we heard about, but hadn't actually seen. You heard like, oh, Tommy Hill's super gifted. You're like, how come you don't see it on the field? Well, they reached him. They were able to tap into that. How much does that impact a guy like him? Right. Yep. I think people like Malcolm Hartzog, he just seems so kind of committed and hard-headed in some ways, the way he plays, that I don't see it maybe affecting him as much because he's just sort of like, I'm just going to ball. Right. Same with Buford. But there's some of those guys that, the relationships do matter, and being able to be in a coach that can, reach them and connect with them to get the most out of them. That's a subtle skill. Now, this could also introduce an opportunity for Butler to roll in. Now, everybody's got a little bit of a clean slate, right? So there could be a guy that makes a jump that maybe wasn't getting as much love from Evan Cooper, because you're dealing with 20 plus guys and there's only 5 spots. Like, somebody has to get left out. In fact, 3/4 of you have to be left out of the starting lineup. So not easy. Gary, but here's the deal. This ends. Since George Darlington, Nebraska's sort of like best run of stability in the defensive backs room. And I pulled together a little PowerPoint presentation. I hope you weren't listening or watching earlier. You probably were, though, because you're a prepared guy. So you're probably checking it out. But we're just going to play a little game. We're going to play a little game. and it is name that defensive backs coach. These are the defensive backs coach for Nebraska for the last 10 years. If you're listening and not watching, I'm sorry, because this is not going to really help you out. But here, let's pull this up here. Let me pull up this window.
With one of these coaches, are you going to swear so we do him justice?
Oh, no. Nice work.
All right. Are we seeing this? Is this up? Do you have it? Can you pull it up there, Chris? Let's see. Let's bring this live. Bring this live. I'm sharing the screen. Okay, who's this? Who are we looking at here?
That would be Travis Fisher.
Travis Fisher, who coached the duration of the Scott Frost era. Okay, this is a little bit of a trick question, but
is he still at Syracuse?
Yeah,
don't know. Yes, he is.
Okay, all right. Now you got to keep this up. You got to keep this.
And
up.
I like T Fish. Here, can I say a quick T Fish story?
Please do.
Yeah.
So he's somebody I got to know when he was the position coach here. It drove him so nuts his first year because guys were more worried about getting a bonus for getting to a bowl game than actually coaching football. Yeah.
But like on the staff?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
That would be right there a guy who should have never lost his job.
And his name is
Mark Banker.
Mark Banker, who is a little bit of a trick question, defensive coordinator and safeties under Mike Riley. How about this guy? That
guy is at Georgia now.
Did he get to Georgia?
Yeah,
so he was at SC.
From USC to Georgia,
So when Fran Brown left, Dante Williams went to Georgia.
Dante Williams famously wore gloves during practice and ran sprints with the team.
Dude, he was
his right leg sleeve rolled up.
Yeah,
recruited his ass off too.
Dante Williams could he could sell, he could sell ketchup popsicles to an Eskimo. Boy, he talked, man. You'd get him going. Man, he'd say some wild stuff, but he loved recruiting. It just, he was on a staff where they didn't have a lot of direction on that side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How about this guy? That I'm showing right now?
That guy, would that be Mr. Warren?
Charlton Warren. He's a transitional guy. He was the carryover from Pelini into Riley. Yep. Okay. This is the most obscure. Now, if you were watching earlier, that's the only way you're going to get this name. If you were listening, do you know who that is? Nobody knows who this guy is. He's the least talked about coach in Nebraska football history.
It's not the guy from The Hangover.
Talked about coach in Nebraska football history.
Well, that guy doesn't even resonate with me.
No, Scott Booker. And even when I say that name, you're not like, oh yeah. You're like, who? What?
Fake. Now in Buffalo.
He was safeties. Yeah, no, he replaced Butler. This is what's crazy. He replaced Butler in Buffalo. But that's Scott Booker. He was a safeties coach under Diaco.
Okay.
No recollection of the guy even existing.
No.
It is true. It is
all
true.
Right.
And then last guy. Also a Riley guy.
That is. Throw up some Marvin Sanders and Jordan, but you're not.
I'm just doing last 10 years. Last
name's Walker.
Nah, close. Stewart.
It was Brian Stewart. Brian Stewart.
It was 2 syllables.
Stewie.
Close.
Yeah.
Not bad. Gary, your batting average was 4.6. That's 666 batting average, I believe, if my math is correct.
So if you want to do a quickie Hail Varsity poll question, which position group has had more head-scratching coaches and coaching in it, running backs or defensive backs, in the last 10 years?
Running backs by far, right? You had Randy Jordan under Callahan. You had oh my God, you had a ton. He was, and he got some production out of guys. Who was the guy that first came in? Reggie Davis.
Ron Brown was a couple of stints.
Ron Brown filled in.
Yeah, Reggie Davis. Remember,
Reggie Davis might have been the worst running back coach ever.
Yeah,
now remember, you're at a university that had the best running back coach ever.
Yeah. He was grumpy. He just never seemed like he liked anything or anybody.
Mark, he just wasn't a very good coach. I don't know what he was coaching, but here's another thing about defensive back coaches at Nebraska. And, George Darlington they've had quite the crew of coaches and, a lot of DBs, they can be divas, man. A defensive back coach has to give it back to him. I mean, they had Phil O'Majan here.
Yeah. Give me you.
You're a fuck.
You started with the grin and the smile when you mentioned swearing in secondary. So you've got 100 Elmo stories. Like Elmo did 2 years at every school in the ACC and the Big Ten, and just was a grumpy dude, man.
Well, I just want people to realize. Should also mention on the stream, a brief time, Bobby Elliott was going to be an assistant coach here before he passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And Bobby Elliott was a really, really good football person. I just want people to realize that in the last 20 years at the University of Nebraska, we have been absolutely blessed. And I mean blessed to have Phil O'Majan and Mario Verduzco have coached here.
Why? Just for being obscure
and Bob Diaco.
Older guys?
And Bob Diaco.
Personalities.
Why can't we have normal assistant coaches? Why do we have to lose assistant coaches because they get in trouble? Why do assistant coaches just all of a sudden disappear and you never know what the true story is, Marvin Sanders?
Where's Hank Hughes? Remember him? He's the one that botched the recruitment of the tight end. Botched the recruitment of Noah Fant. Like, Hank, it was a layup. Like, you just
son, are you here to play defensive end?
Hey, for those of us old enough, it makes you appreciate the somewhat stability that in T.O.'s last years he had, on his staff. Oh, and there's some guys that left that went on to, Kevin Steele to get jobs or Coach Sam.
Tony Samuel. Yeah.
But I mean, Nebraska's a good place to be an assistant. If you do well at Nebraska, you could move on to other things, or you're paid well. I mean, Evan Cooper was paid nearly $700,000. And remember, he was courted, especially back in the NFL in the offseason, and they went out of their way to keep him. That's why this has got to be painful for Rhule. I mean, that Evan Cooper essentially is a kid to him. He's kind of brought him up through the industry, and they know each other so well. So for, you have to dismiss a guy because it's not football related. I mean, that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and Rhule was conscious about elevating his profile too. He wanted people to know that Cooper was his guy and that Cooper was really talented. He was working camps this month.
I had a really good conversation with somebody last night. And, we've all speculated when Tony White is ready to move on and become a head coach. And I preface this by saying we might be quicker to move Tony White into a head coaching job than Tony is, but it's inevitable because he is really, really talented. So we've all speculated, as Rhule likes to promote from within, Rob Dvorak. I talking to someone last night.
You don't hear a lot about him.
We were talking about how, this is gonna, this can't be good for Rhule. He's got to be really disappointed. And they said Evan Cooper was his guy. Evan Cooper was his next DC. He was the guy. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, okay.
You can see it. He was defensive. He was passing game coordinator on the defense, which stands to reason.
Yeah. And so when you look at John Butler's resume, he has been defensive back coach, passing game coordinator with Buffalo.
Okay.
So you've got internal candidates, and Rhule practices what he preaches. He wants to promote from within. Yeah. Again, not to make this into who's the next DC, because you've got a great one here, but you have options. And to your initial point, Sharpie, it is really about the contingencies with Matt Rhule. He's ready for good, bad, or ugly with what needs to be next.
Well, and I think
that's big.
Yeah, you're right, Schmitty. And think about it. Whether it be a guy is forced to resign or a guy takes a job at the last moment, you got to be ready. I mean, you have a list of people because Rhule's got a wide-ranging network. You could go way back. Sean Padden has a connection to John Butler, but I think the Bill O'Briens and the Sean McDermotts out there, and especially Sean McDermott, probably, Rhule probably is calling around. I mean, it's not ideal in the middle of June to be looking for a defensive back coach because recruiting is going on. Then
Cooper's squarely into that too.
Then guys transition to a little bit of vacation before the season ratchets it back up. So you have to lean into your network, and this just sounds like one of those. But if you're Rhule, you're always thinking, hey, what if Terrence Knighton all of a sudden gets a DC job in the NFL and he comes into my office on Tuesday and we hit the road recruiting on Thursday? I got to be ready. So in my mind, I've identified some guys either I've coached with or coached against that I'm like, hey, you know what? If we ever got the opportunity, that'd be a guy that I'd like to talk to.
Well, it's funny in the coaching fraternity, you see it happen a lot. Guys will make hires beyond the coaching fraternity. I got a guy, here's a dude. It's not always necessarily a buddy hire.
Yeah.
But just, I think back to Bob Stoops. Why did he hire Leach as his OC?
Yeah.
Well, I hated trying to defend the guy when I was the defensive coordinator at Florida, right? You're going to go, if you do your due diligence, find guys that you really respect, maybe made you pull your hair out a little bit and go that route. And listen, don't kid yourself. Matt Rhule can make a phone call to Spurrier or Brewster or Mac Brown or Bill O'Brien or Sean McDermott. He maybe called all five, but those are the coaching tree connections with John Butler, and on top of just maybe what he knows about Butler anyway, the guy that climbed a ladder from Division III to land at Texas and then coach in Texas and then do his thing in the NFL. So it's quite a story with John Butler, a guy that's 51 years old from Catholic college.
University, Catholic University. Generic.
The Fighting
Catholic
Cardinals, as
University.
Kraynak informed me this morning. So
I thought it'd be Crusaders with an unoriginal name like that. I thought for sure it'd be the Catholic Crusaders, but
this works out well.
I wonder real quickly here. So, you come in, you got to hit the ground running. You're going to watch film. You're going to get to know players because these guys are all new to you. It's not like you've been coaching against Nebraska, so you're familiar with some of the personnel. I wouldn't be surprised in this transition until everybody becomes, comfortable and, they know what they're doing, and just to, help you in the transition. If Tony White helps out with defensive backs, he's a guy at Arizona State. He worked with cornerbacks. He was the defensive passing game coordinator. So Tony White may be a little bit more hands-on the defensive backfield, maybe initially. I'm wondering if that'll be the case.
Your biggest personnel decision that you have to make is the corner opposite Tommy Hill.
Yep. I
think as we sit here today, conservatively, if you just want to go the conservative route, I suppose Hartzog, but I think that's that's not his natural position. I don't believe. So does this now elevate a Sierra Wright? He played quite a bit for USC. USC's defense wasn't great, so we don't really know how good he is. But played a lot for them. So he's got Division I experience. Maybe it's him. But you have to figure that out. And then you got to figure out your two safeties. Gifford's lockdown, right? Like for sure.
Yes.
From there, it's Singleton.
Gifford, Singleton, and Tommy Hill are your starters.
And then that leaves a safety spot and another corner spot.
Buford, Hartzog, right.
And probably, and I think you're pretty close to having 4 of those locked down because Buford should be the guy at free safety. I essentially think for the cornerback spot opposite Tommy Hill, you have until Bly Hill is ready to come back. And it's not like he's going to dislodge anybody. He'll be back into the mix. You probably got 4 guys for that spot.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're young. You got Charles, you got Boodle, you got Buford, and then you've got Malcolm Hartzog.
Yeah, I think Hartzog's your safe pick, right? He's your safe pick if the other guys aren't ready. Charles, probably the biggest X factor, just learning the game, basically. But probably the one of the more athletic guys on the entire team.
What do you think of Doss, Sharpie?
I think he's playing defense.
He's in the program. He's moving around.
But
well.
I'm saying he was talked up a little bit about guy can be really good with the measurables and the athleticism, or is that just?
Yeah, no, I think some guys when they change sides of the ball, they work out. Other guys don't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
You're waiting to see.
Yeah, I think I don't know. In my head, a guy goes from being talked about on offense to all of a sudden, even though there's depth over there, but he can't break through.
Sure.
Now he's a defensive back. What's going on there?
Mm-hmm. I get you.
And you throw him into a defensive back group that is just loaded with guys.
Yeah.
It might be, you know what? This is your last chance in our program. You got to go find a home.
Go make it happen.
He's got too many syllables for me to pronounce his name right, but Sincere Syafalala, you know what I'm talking about? Sincere, Syncer. That's the one that Cooper famously tweeted about. Hey, just show up to workouts on time. Interesting, at the spring game, sat pretty close. Body type wise, Sincere is impressive. I mean, he's sort of like, you remember Alex Davis and I can't think of his name. The defensive end that played like 5 years for Nebraska somehow, also was just built unlike anybody else in terms of range, size, all of that. Cam, what was the guy's name? He played for 5 years. He set like the record for playing the most games in a Husker uniform because of his red shirt and everything else. Number 2, taller guy, 6'5".
Oh, Cam. No.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Well, I can't think. His most famous thing is the cigar in the locker room in Iowa City.
Yeah, that guy. But to my point, just like an impressive physical specimen. Sincere is one of those guys too. I don't know if they're moving him to linebacker. I don't know if maybe he's safety, but that's a guy that could get potentially a new lease on life too. So interesting scenario that he's walking into, and it could have impacts on the team.
Caleb
Tanner. Thank you. Man,
driving me nuts. I'm sorry.
The commenters come through again.
Yes.
Caleb Tanner, though, if you're down in the tunnel walk and, all the players come right, he sticks out among other football players, right? Like there are certain guys that just do that. Nebraska's got a few of those cats. So,
Mark, they look different. I mean, they've had a good summer. Like when people see Williams, man, he now has like that Wistrom body. I wonder if he'll wear the crop top. Where
you're talking about James? You're talking about James Williams?
Yeah,
he was pretty frail last year.
Now because he was
comparatively
like raw, yeah. Like Butler is pretty cock diesel. They have some guys that they finally have, even though they're a relatively young roster, they have guys that look like they have portfolios, a white picket fence house with 2.5 kids.
Minivan. You got to have the minivan.
They actually have some guys that look older because they're bigger.
Yep.
So
give me those dudes. Yeah. Give me those dudes that have a receding hairline at age 21. Like, yep, that is exactly the type of dude you need on your team.
Sharpie, as we wind it down, Big Cat, have either of you ever had to deal with a walking boot?
I have not.
No,
I have not. I still can't get over how you did it, but
Chris,
dude,
should we tell the listeners?
Just hammer me on this glorious Saturday morning.
I'm gonna edit a little bit here just for brevity's sake. Chris is in a walking boot because that's a suit. That is a boot, dude. You look like a
shout out Nebraska Orthopedic. I love you.
So Chris, this is a golfing injury, but not just a golfing injury.
You know how Trey gets fired on his day off and Friday? Yeah, well,
a sitting in a golf cart injury. Okay.
Yeah, I'm with my cousin Jeremy and my uncle Morris. We're playing at Tiburon. yesterday.
What's
making
the one
turn.
Rule? What's the one rule in vehicles, Ferris wheels, whatever? Keep your hands and feet,
arms and hands. Yeah. Keep your extremities in the cart.
Chris has his just hanging out, and then just smashes into a wall and contorts your ankle, and just a disaster.
I got pinned, and I was closer to the wall than I anticipated. And
this is sober.
Yeah, I've had zero to drink. Sharpie grins at me.
And this is
like unreal.
This is as a precursor too, because you're on some almost like a golf fantasy trip next week, right?
I'm supposed to play tomorrow. I'm supposed to play Monday.
Oh man.
Team Jack, and then I'm off to Wild Horse Wednesday. In Gothenburg, Central Nebraska Tuesday. I take minimal vacation because you take vacation in radio, they send you on permanent vacation.
That's Chris's fear. And look what happens. You take vacation and you lose a limb.
So yeah, it's absolutely it's busted. So, but the doctors said as long as you stay in the cart, you can still hit.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and get it out.
And if it makes you feel any better, I have
you blew your knee gardening.
I have a gardening injury. Yeah. I was talking to one of my friends too.
What are you planting, Kraynak?
I planted some petunias, some flowers. My boy Keith, shout out. Keith.
My kid right now is just shaking his head at me as he's going to start charging me for ibuprofen.
My boy Keith, shout out Keith. When I told him that I have a gardening injury, he's like, "Don't worry, I'm nursing a sleeping injury on my shoulder right now." It's that time. It's that time. We kind of reached that point where.
Hey, let me let me read you a tweet. This is from Matrix Analytical at CFB Analytical.
Oh yeah,
they just tweeted out. Probably listen to the show. Very strong grab and a tight timeline for Coach Rhule. Butler, while at Penn State, was a rising star in our CRI and a top 30% graded DB coach for his time in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Top 30. Yeah. So he's an upper echelon defensive back coach, according to deep sabermetrics in football.
Again, a coach who had a little bit of leeway, a lead up, but with a plan, a strong network, availability, and also an idea of exactly what he wanted. The NFL experience is pretty important. So, and again, I think in a short amount of time where you go from one of your better assistant coaches and you got to make a hire and you don't know what's out there, I think this is a good for 2024. This is a good. We got a guy. All right, now we're on to the next thing. Season starts, practice in a month. Let's go. We still think we're a really good football team. If you're here, you're here. Let's go.
So he was there too during the DeMar Hamlin situation. Also, that would have been one of his players.
John
Butler.
Yeah, I think. I wonder if this. I've heard this before. I think Matt Rhule and Sean McDermott have a pretty good relationship.
Okay.
So even though, and I also, Butler was just looking into some articles this morning. Butler was pretty upfront on. It wasn't like he got fired in Buffalo. He wants to be a defensive coordinator. He was a little disappointed he got passed over. And so he left to go find something else. And, in the middle of late June, he has a new job.
And he's coming straight from the NFL in that he's been there the last 10 years. He was with the Texans from 2014 to 2017, Bills from 2018 to 2023. So that's a good thing to sell on the recruiting trail too. Is
good run.
Bringing in a guy. Yeah, we're bringing in a dude here that's 10 consecutive years as an NFL defensive back.
So here's another thing is you can talk the language with the guys in the room. Okay. So you walk in the door and their buddy is out the door and they're going, man, what in the then a guy walks in and he's immediately got that resume. There's a lot of respect when he walks into that room because you can talk experiences, okay? You can talk, hey, in Buffalo, we had this guy. That's how he played. I see you as this guy. Before you ever get to know any of the guys that are playing for Nebraska. But most importantly, when you sit down in that room, and, Tony White does a great job of coaching up his coaches, and they help coach him up. They all can sit and they can talk the language. So just some familiarity. And I don't know, the NFL world is a small world when it comes to assistant coaches as well, because they can be kind of gypsies in certain cases. I bet we're going to find out that the NFL guys on the defensive side of the ball have a familiarity with John Butler as well.
Well, see how Nebraska moves forward, and that name, John Butler, spent a lot of time on the Evan Cooper departure. Weekend edition winding down. Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse, rocking and rolling. Mark Kraynak, Chris Schmidt. Sharpie, weekend looks like what for you as we say goodbye?
You know what? It's probably going to look like this. I'm glad my voice is still in shape because I went to the fireworks like everybody else did on Thursday night, whether it be in your neighborhood. My neighborhood looked like Baghdad. I felt like the Scud Stud. I was like reporting from my neighborhood as the sky was ablaze. But I went all Mike Breen on people around me. I was like, bang, bang, bang.
Bang!
You know what I will probably do today? While I'm grilling, I will contemplate two things. One, the next time we have a major holiday in this country, college football will have started. And also while I'm grilling, I'm going to think, man, is Nebraska going to cover the 4 touchdowns against UTEP? That's what I'm going to be doing today.
I would say yes, by the way. They will. UTEP's in disarray.
I would say as well. Also keep in mind, earlier this week, you and I, because of a health reason, their offensive coordinator stepped down.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's all coming up roses.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask a quick question to get out of here?
Please.
Andy Staples, like a lot of people have speculated that, man, Nebraska, if things fall their way and they get momentum,
7-0, right?
And they start stacking performances, they could be 7-0 going to Ohio State. I want to find the person that has Nebraska exiting Columbus 8-0.
You're not gonna.
Okay,
not with that.
I just had to be fair.
No, but that payroll.
Fan of Fox News, they're fair and balanced.
That payroll that Ohio State has, right? You had two things. It's Michigan, beat Michigan or bust for Ryan Day. Okay. And then 2, it's Uncle Phil in Oregon wants a natty before he dies. I mean, those are the two things creeping up here a month away. Here's what I believe. I was talking with some folks yesterday before the injury, and I believe that Nebraska will perform at a high level in some of these big moment opportunities. I'm not saying they're going to win all of them, but I don't think it's going to be, let's fake our own death, get beat 60-3 in Columbus at night. I think Nebraska will come to play and play well. And okay, Tom heard you, Sharpie.
All right, put Tom on the board.
Tom says, I have us 8-0.
And he's honest. He's a Husker homer.
Yeah. We're going to be in Columbus for that. So.
Nice. All right. That's great. The show's going to be there. Can't wait. Are we all going to be in the same room?
Yeah, I'll make that happen. We're going to we're going to get connected with Turtle from Entourage because he lives in Columbus.
Wow, that's quite the change.
Really?
So can I be the boring one of the show here? Right. We want trending time to start winning.
Yeah.
Can Nebraska just start 1-0, please?
Sure. Against the spread, Sharpie, back to your covering the 4? Or?
Just win. Just be 1-0. Wake up on Sunday to start September, and Nebraska is 1-0.
That'd be
Would be nice. Would be nice.
And then we can go from there.
Mm-hmm.
I just
7 of those sounds great. I think Colorado is going to be a fist fight. I think that's going to be a fun one, but it isn't going to be, Halloween 92. I don't think it's going to be a 52-7 beatdown. That's what Nebraska fan wants. I think Rutgers will be a pain in the ass too, to be honest.
If you get 52-7 on week 2 in Memorial Stadium with a night game, Dannon ain't going to have to worry about what they're going to do at the South Stadium. The fans literally will tear down the South Stadium by themselves, and then they'll be screwed the next week against Northern Iowa. Like, Oh, my seat's in rubble. But, man, we won 52-7. Let me read you a text real quick. Somebody asked about John Butler, kind of the same stuff we've already talked about this morning. He said one of the things that made it appealing is people like working for Rhule.
Yeah. Well, because he promotes and he coaches you. Well, he coaches his coaches hard, but he's not ever going to hide you from any promotion.
Hey, Rhule, whether you're an on-field person or off the field person, if you work hard, he'll reward you and he'll help you get to where you want to go. He's a grinder, man. It's not the easiest thing to work for him, but there are rewards if you can match that work ethic. Yeah. But this person who's in the business said people like working for Rhule, so you don't have a lot of turnover on his staff, and his network is extremely strong.
The Buffs really wanted Rhule.
And he's built a pretty significant football apparatus to where the coaches can truly focus on coaching and recruiting. They don't have to deal with a lot of personnel things. They don't have to. If you look at how many people are on Rhule's total staff, dozens and dozens and dozens of people.
Well, here's another thing. I think, and this is probably, John Butler's a veteran, so it's not like he's new and he's like an up and comer. He's a rising star. As we talk about talent evaluation when it comes to recruiting, I think Rhule has a good eye for talent evaluation when it comes to coaches. Did he err with Satterfield as his OC? More as the quarterback coach. There are a lot of things that came together, but he corrected it quickly. And his connection to Glenn Thomas, he's like, Glenn, you need to be in Lincoln. I look at this. He essentially put together that defensive staff before he got a coordinator. And then he hired Tony White because he knew that they would fit together. And then he just let Tony White do his job. Let Tony White teach the defense and let his assistants interact and, they exchange ideas and then they go to coach the players. So that's why again, the timing is not great, but I think Nebraska can move forward quickly here instead of going, okay, what's this guy done? He didn't have much on the resume. They got a guy that's a veteran that's seen a lot of football, that now his biggest challenge will getting to know guys in his room, what their strengths and weaknesses are. And, talking, and I imagine getting some help again, like I said, from Tony White, and they'll move forward. That's the thing. They do not want anything to derail them this year. They feel internally very, very confident on what they have in place and no outside noise. They've kept everything internally. You'll hear them at Big Ten Media Days. People will go, hey, there's been a lot of offseason chatter about Nebraska. And I imagine the guys that will be there will say, you know what, we just want to play. We just want to go out and play. Instead of leaning into it like we've had for now like 4 or 5 weeks of national people going, man, Nebraska's got something.
Who do you think finds their way to Indy?
You know what? I think Isaac Gifford's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I actually would take
He'll test well too.
I actually think I would take 3 defensive guys.
Okay.
I would take Tommy Hill, Isaac Gifford, and Nash Hutmacher.
Good call.
No Ty Robinson.
No, I'd go Nash Hutmacher.
Mm-hmm.
Offensively, Ben Hart maybe. But, every offensive guy is going to be asked about Dominic Raiola or Dylan Raiola. Excuse me.
Yeah, but I still got my eye on Ty Robinson. He started to come along late last year because, he was injured going into the season. But he started coming on. And if you think about his body type, you can play him kind of anywhere.
Yeah,
on a three-man front.
Yeah. Now, you're talking about the combine.
Yeah.
No, we're talking Big Ten Media Days.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot.
No, you're fine. But you're right about Ty. Ty's going to Ty will get to go to Indianapolis. I'm just saying Nash is so, they've got a core group of guys that are kind of the faces that have been the leaders since they started summer conditioning. But Nash Hutmacher, he's the guy that's on the front of Phil Steele's magazine. He's the guy that's got the nickname. He's got the wrestling background. He's a story. Isaac Gifford can tell the story of the transition from one staff to another. And a guy who, quite frankly, might be Nebraska's best player.
And Tommy Hill can tell the story about realizing potential.
Yeah. Reclamation.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if you want 3 guys that represent your program, those are the 3 guys.
Mm-hmm.
But there might be this. Ben Hart would be a possibility.
Fedoni?
Maybe.
Maybe.
I mean,
I think he's got. Fedoni's got loose lips though, right? Like that guy, he will say what he thinks.
I love it.
I don't know about him in a set. Like I could see Rhule being like, I don't know if I trust him. Like
James with a Ben Scott suggestion.
Yeah, you can talk about his being engaged.
Yeah,
Wait, by the way, when I say loose lips, I'm not saying that Fedoni reveals insider info. I'm just saying he tells it like it is, and you can tell he's like seconds away from saying something that's
here's one way to look at it, and this is it's not a knock on Nebraska. When you're not in the spotlight and winning, you don't get to know outside of what we do and the fan base a lot of the guys. If Ben Scott walked into the Big Ten media days, and Ben Scott's one of the better centers in the league, would people go, "Oh yeah, hey, there's Ben Scott"?
No, it's relatively obscure. Yeah,
I mean, really, the most recognizable player nationally that Nebraska has outside of 15, is it Nash?
It is Nash.
I mean, they got some great personalities. Okay. And they got some very likable guys, but in terms of walking down the street in Chicago or Indianapolis, you go, "Hey, oh man, he looks like a football player. Who's he play for?"
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's the next phase of there
some
were
household names.
There were household names when things were good. They need to get back to the household names that are not number 15. And I'm not saying 15 doesn't need to be in your household, because 15 you need to be sleeping with 15, but you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, I think you had that with Adrian. I think you had that with Amir. You had that with Taylor Martinez. Those are kind of the 3. Kenny Bell, of course, very recognizable.
Rex started to creep outside of the state because of things that he was doing.
Sure.
Yeah.
But they are, I think they would really eventually. It'd be nice to have the face of a program isn't always the default head coach.
Yeah. Have a player or 2 that folks recognize.
But they won't, they'll go to Indianapolis and they'll represent well, and they won't do anything to put on a bulletin board.
Yeah.
That'll be all good. Sharpie, enjoy your weekend. Appreciate you much, man.
Hey, do you know? Hey, can I say one thing here? It's not funny, but isn't it ironic? There was some drama before a 5:00 announcement yesterday. How about the Harper Murray? So Harper Murray, there was a picture of her with her fingers bandaged, and you were like, "Oh, July 4th. What happened?" Well, she had a nail that was infected that she had to have worked on, and so she put on TikTok a picture of her fingers bandaged, and there is like a pool, and she's in a doctor's office, and a pool of blood behind her, and you're thinking, "Oh God." So she had to respond and say, "No, I had an infected nail. I had to get cleaned out. I'm good." But you would have thought, okay, phew, we haven't had some drama in a while.
Yeah.
And then
I know.
So now it's just time to go play football. Yes,
it's
Patrick.
not a bottle rocket injury. Yeah. It's a procedure done that was pre-scheduled.
I mean, it's July 5th, and you're thinking,
no, I know. You do the math.
Who, has already had an interesting offseason.
There's been 100 people on the stream say I was 48 bush lights deep yesterday, and that isn't the case at all.
Yeah, I know. That's the crazy thing. It would be much better. It'd be a much better story if you were hammered.
I know.
But the fact that you were sober,
idiot.
I mean, that's like how do you
He's
explain
bad.
that to your insurance?
And like, you can't avoid a wall on a golf course. Like,
listen,
dude, there's plenty of open space to just.
Oh my God! I was just driving down the 18th fairway, and a wall just popped out in front of me.
It's by the clubhouse, you goons. By the putting green, and there's a retaining wall, and there's carts on each side. You're trying to skirt through, and so you go a little bit too far left, and then
stick your feet out. Sounds like a good idea.
You remember the episode of Mad Men where the drunk secretary gets on the riding lawnmower and chops off the foot of the British version of Don Draper. That's what I feel like.
Okay. You know what I feel like? I feel great that we spent an hour and 45 minutes. This is why I love Nebraska and this show in particular. Hour and 45 minutes on a defensive backs coach. Like, we were pretty single threaded today. Like, we kind of jump around topics. We just hammered, deconstructed the hell out of that topic over an hour 45, and we could probably do another hour 45 on it. But
I'm being sarcastic, Patrick, but I don't want to for the 14th time say just one more thing. But before the month is over, we do need to talk about Kenny Clark's son is a freak athlete. Quinn Clark.
Oh, yeah. There was a meme, or not a meme, a somewhat viral video of him in a dunk contest. It looks like he was by Schramm or something.
Yes, it's Harper Schramm
because
Smith.
He's out of is he Montana or Wyoming?
He's Montana.
Yeah.
Montana,
so
he did like between the legs, like
it became it became like a group. Hey, we're gonna have a dunk contest. A lot of the people that were there are not his teammates. They're more or less like 14, 15, 16-year-old kids that live in Lincoln. And so they're having a dunk contest on those basketball courts. And Quinn Clark was pretty good. I think Quinn Clark, he's got great bloodlines. His dad is one of the most underrated running backs in the history of Nebraska football that doesn't get enough run because he never talked to the media. But man, Kenny Clark was a dude. His son, it's going to take a little bit. His son has got some incredible athletic ability, but even more so, I've been told he's got great football IQ, which will help him play in a position that a lot of dudes at wide receiver right now in Nebraska.
No, he's big time. Love the story of Kenny Clark being able to partner up with Eric Dickerson when they were both playing for the Colts, and Kenny'd drive whatever vehicle that Edie wasn't driving. So if Edie was taking the golden Trans Am he still had from A&M as he drove it to SMU, Kenny'd be driving the Mercedes, and they really connected. But Ken Clark, one of my favorites, man, out-dueled Barry Sanders.
Yeah, a person that left us way too soon.
I know, that's sad.
Let's throw out real quick, since we're going old Husker running backs. Guy I ran into at the 2015 Nebraska-Miami game in Miami, Doug DeBose.
Yes, dude, I see him on Facebook.
Dude looks like he could still play. I'm serious. The dude was shredded, and he introduced himself as Doug DeBose. I'm Doug DeBose. Like, cool.
I'm Mark Kraynak, and I still have your jersey.
Like, sweet.
So,
nice to meet you, bro.
So Doug DeBose has come back to Nebraska a lot lately. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he'll make a visit to Lincoln. He'll come back here quite a bit, but it's unfortunate. There's one of those guys that is the great one of the what ifs, because when he was healthy, man, incredible. he was in the line of, 22 was a flash, and he was in the line of those great running backs. But I don't know. I've talked to him before. There's part of him that he wishes he could have stayed healthy, but man, dude, he had some major injuries. But when he was healthy, that jump cut, he had the neck roll that would come down. Wearing 22, he was right in the line of the great I-backs at Nebraska. But it is kind of cool that he is more active in watching his alma mater coming back to Nebraska. You'll see him in the spring. He was back for the spring game, and he'll come back for a game or two in the fall. He's got a new. I don't know if it's now his fiance, wife, or whatever. He had last time I saw him, he was with his girlfriend in Lincoln, and was really, really happy. And I think kind of peace with where he's at, in his football life. But people that know how good he was at Nebraska.
What a run of backfields where you go Rozier, and then Paul Miles, and then you go DeBose, and you had that Rathman DeBose 1-2 punch.
Yeah, then you had Leotis Flowers, Ken Clark. Just go on and on. You were.
Well, and then you transition in the 90s, and
Calvin, Derek.
Look at if we don't have the we backs where Calvin and Derek Brown are sharing carries, look at the stats that Calvin Jones could have had.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And then you had, I mean, look at the running back room in the early 90s. I mean, and those guys all stayed. Clinton and Damon and Lawrence, and then you attract a guy like Jay Sims, who was probably underrated. But kind of something going back to we talked about earlier when you were going through the defensive back coaches, and I said, look at running back coaches. You had one of, if not the best running back coach of all time in college football, Frank Solich.
Yep.
Frank got him ready, man.
And you also had a city in Nebraska that has 1 million people that was producing dude after dude after dude. It wasn't just Omaha Central, Omaha Northwest, Omaha North, Omaha Bryan, where Ken Clark went to school.
Omaha South, Vershawn Jackson he moved to tight end,
and then even guys that didn't go to Nebraska. Remember the run of Creighton Prep running backs?
Yeah,
yeah, there were a handful.
Pretty good. Mm-hmm. Well, there we go.
Yeah, and okay, last thing. to Gary's point though about we want guys that look like they have grandchildren, like a Clinton Childs, right? Clinton Childs was a grown ass man from the time he stepped on the field. Yeah, more guys like that.
Are we talking about Clinton or Lovie Smith?
See,
good call.
I know. It's like, now he's got the white beard.
Clinton's a dude. I think he'll be back at Burke. He was an assistant at Burke last year. Yeah, man, he's one of my favorite guys. It is, in
big wrestling guy.
He's a huge wrestling guy, and he was a great wrestler in high school. It just is kind of amazing that Nebraska had an abundance of talent, and guys didn't leave. They maybe wanted to leave. Lawrence Phillips was ready to transfer, and he kind of had to be talked into staying. But they had so many guys at position groups, deep guys. Even look at the quarterback room in the early 90s, guys. And guys stuck around. I mean, at one time you had
except for Ben Roots, traitor.
Well, okay, so you had Roots, and you had Behringer, and you had Veland, you had Cluster, T. Frage. They were all in that quarterback room. Some guys got moved. One, Cluster went to wide receiver, and Tony went to defensive back.
I'm really surprised. I would have loved to have seen Veland. I'm glad Tommy came, obviously, but Veland would have been a problem at quarterback for sure. That dude, he was slick. Same with Cluster.
Veland was money.
Cluster was so freakishly strong. I mean, he could have been, that tells you something. Those were two guys that were recruited heavily nationally, and they both switched positions. That tells you how good Tommy was.
Well, it speaks to their just want to go play and win, right? Yeah. What's the mentality?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Lester blocking on the edge.
The home state program gave you no reason to say, "Oh, I'm going to look elsewhere."
Yeah,
and then here's the thing. It's actually it can be good or bad depending on how you look at it with in-state recruiting. The quality of football talent, not just in Omaha and in Lincoln, but throughout the state, has gotten so much better because it's turned into a year-round gig. Yes. I mean, there's 7-on-7 going on. There's, private facilities for workouts, like the Warren Academy and so on and so forth. There was the time that nobody came into the state of Nebraska because Nebraska was going to get every kid. Yeah. Now, where Nebraska's at right now, even though their in-state recruiting really in the last 3 years has been on point, people are still coming into Nebraska because the talent is here. And they're going to swing for the fences and try and convince somebody to go to Florida State, not stay home and go to Nebraska. So it's on Nebraska. They're not going to get every in-state kid. And right now, Rhule has done a good job with the guys that he wants. They get. But I don't know if you'll ever get back to that point where people just don't come into Nebraska because they know, gosh, if they're good, they're staying home.
It's the border. There's no border anymore. And you've seen programs, mainly Iowa or Iowa State, get some wins the past 15 years. But Nebraska is a spot with Rhule, Sharpie that they're not taking their in-state kids for granted. That's the biggest thing.
No, and they identify them early and they build a relationship. And so, it's not like okay, or Johnny come lately. Maybe to a Teddy Rizak they were, and Johnny come lately in a scholarship, and they offered a scholarship. There was no way he was going to Nebraska. He was going to go to Notre Dame. But they're more organized. I mean, as kind of to land the plane so we can turn off the stream. You have a guy in charge who has a plan for everything. And it's not just spontaneous. There's a reason behind every action, whether it be a dismissal, whether it be a hiring, whether it be recruiting and initial relationship building, or a network of, Rhule has done a really good job in a short amount of time in establishing an in-state former Husker network where he leans on guys that suggest to the staff, hey, he's only in ninth grade, but do you guys want his film? They're saying yes. Yeah. The one thing that helped with Rhule's Texas connection, there's a strong group of former Huskers, and we're talking like in the 80s and in the early 90s that live in the Metroplex. And they have suggested kid after kid after kid to Nebraska. Even some of those former Huskers have brought that kid to a spring game so they can see the campus, and they've gotten no return on their investment, not even okay, we'll look at him. Rhule's done a good job of expanding his network where he'll listen to former players, and that's why I also think you see guys, former players don't bat an eye in sending their kids to play at Nebraska. Don't ever overlook that former players are sending their guys here, sending their kids here, knowing what they're getting into because of the name on the back of their jersey, what they did during their career, or the fact they're an in-state kid and they just must be good because their dad played at Nebraska and had success.
Yep. Sharpie, appreciate you, brother. Thank you much.
Thanks, fellas. What are we, 9 Saturdays away?
Patrick, 8. Good suggestion, Patrick. Change the name of the show to the Just One More Thing podcast.
Just one more thing.
That's not bad.
Kraynak, appreciate you.
All right, fellas. Be good.
We'll be back at you next time. Like and subscribe. Hail Varsity YouTube.
Stay away
Hail
from
Varsity
those walls,
Radio,
Chris.
Twitter.
Stay away from those walls. Keep your feet inside the vehicle.
Kraynak, right. You keep on gardening. Talk to you next time. Thanks so much.
Be good, y'all.